2042 has been out for over a year and we have at least 2 more seasons of content coming before the end of its life cycle, confirmed by DICE and EA. We also know there's multiple studios seemingly working on potential Battlefield titles or additions to the overarching 2042 universe. But that also means we've had over a year to think about what we've missed, what we want to see, and really how we would like the next Battlefield game to look and play. So today, I thought I'd throw us forward in time to the next release and talk about where I see and hope the franchise goes in terms of both setting and gameplay. From what we've heard from Marcus Leto and others in the know, the potential for us to have a direct follow-up to 2042 seems pretty likely. With that in mind, it's definitely an open book in terms of the setting, the same as we've had in 2042, where we could go anywhere in the world given the fact that everything's possible. But where I think 2042 has really missed the mark is capitalising on this accessibility, and the variety that we've seen in the game hasn't really been there. For me, I've missed a few things that have been constant in other Battlefield games, particularly in terms of setting. Firstly, I've desperately missed jungle-based or foliage-dense maps. I know we obviously had Valparaiso put into Portal, but none of the maps introduced in 2042 have really been like this. I think that DICE could have capitalised on the work they'd done with the Pacific update for Battlefield 5 and maybe lent into that a bit more in 2042. Particularly given the state of the world that they were fighting in, the idea that potentially no-pats could be based in these jungle areas makes a lot more sense. To go along with this, I think we've really missed naval combat. Again, a mainstay in a lot of other Battlefield titles, and particularly in games like Battlefield 4 where we had the Naval Strike DLC specifically focused around it. The variation in gameplay from engaging in both land and sea combat in one play space has been sorely missed. Again, I know we've had Noshal Canals, but that's not quite the same as, say, the Naval Strike DLC. And lastly, this is more to do with 2042 and again the setting of the world that we're in, but it'd be great to see more of the devolution of society in game, so things like overgrown cities, very clear structural damage, and the overall impact that the world has seen over the past 20-30 years. This has been discussed at length and I know a lot of people have mentioned it, but it definitely feels like it was too sanitized when we first got into 2042. The maps looked too clean with very little damage, and it really didn't give the gritty feel that we expected from a Battlefield game. With regards to gameplay in the next Battlefield game, I think the first thing that needs to be mentioned is the class system. I know we're receiving one in a little over a few weeks now, but to be honest, I'm not too sure it's going to fit into 2042 at this point. However, in my opinion, I think we do need to go back to that class system for the next title from the outset. Keeping in line with 2042 though, I think 64 player breakthrough and 128 player conquest seems like the natural approach to the next title, depending on how far into the future we're looking and how many years of development we're going to see. Something which is slightly more contentious though is around a single player component or campaign being reintroduced with the next game, and this is more than likely going to be via Marcus Leto's new studio Ridgeline Games. This could also be a standalone product, but I doubt this will have much traction if that's the case. The lore of 2042 has been pretty much put on the back burner, and I think it will take something huge to try and bring this back around to the attention of players. For example, the recent event, the Battle of Nordvik, even though it has a clear focus in terms of the world of 2042, it definitely hasn't resonated with many of us. I think most of the community aren't particularly interested. We were definitely more interested in the actual game modes we were playing than what was happening in the lore. With this in mind, DICE may follow the model 343 have recently taken with Halo Infinite and release the multiplayer as a free component, but will have to pay for the campaign. This again will probably fit better with the live service approach we've seen in recent Battlefields. I think the tagline, bigger is better, was the approach that was used with 2042, and really it hasn't paid off that well. But this could be refined into a much more effective product given the lessons learned over the course of 2042's life cycle. For example, will we see improved destruction in the next game? To me, it's what made Battlefield unique and innovative in comparison to a lot of other FPS games at the time. Lastly, we've still lost a lot of the community-focused features of prior games. Battlefield's always been a community-driven game, as it's been carried for over 20 years by its core fan base. I think this needs to be recognised moving forwards, at least to try and rectify some of the mistakes in this area from 2042. For example, the lack of platoons, effective squad features, and even in-game communication has really hampered 2042's growth, and this definitely needs to be addressed. The fact that games like Apex Legends add clubs into the game while DICE then take away platoons shows how much of a massive oversight that was. In my opinion, it'd be great to see these types of things make a return. Honestly though, I'm not convinced that we'll have these come back. To wrap everything up, I think there's a big melting pot of potential for the next game. DICE and the respective studios need to make sure that each of the parts, whether that be multiplayer, single player or Portal, all fit together and mesh together well, whilst also applying an overarching community-driven element to much of what the player base want to see. A big thank you to Carpo's AI images that I used at the start of the video. Please go check him out in the links in the description. And then let me know in the comments, where do you see Battlefield going next and what do you want to see? As always, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks very much for your time and I'll catch you all in the next one.